Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm gonna call the Board of Education meeting for School District 75, Tuesday, March 14th at 7 o'clock to order. Roll call.
Gross,
Here.
Carl. Here. Hitzke.
Here.
Vegas,
Here.
Fingerhead here, Billy's here,
Here.
Holly is out.
Thank you. Do we have anyone present this evening who wishes to address the board?
Is anyone online?
Mr. Pilot has joined us and Miss Seaman, Nicole Simon. They're online, but they know what you're talking about.
They don't want to talk?
I'm not very hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Call public comment.
So, sir, before you go, Board of Education welcomes citizen input. Citizens are reminded to limit their comments to 3 minutes, and also that matters regarding employees or confidential student matters will not be allowed, nor will the board respond. Okay.
All right, can everyone hear me okay? Yes, do I need this?
That doesn't work.
Okay, good. Hello, my name is Todd Katz. I teach STEAM and body systems at Carl Sandburg Middle School. This is my first year here, but my 22nd year teaching. I am part of, I don't know if I could say this or not based on what you just said, but I'm part of the funding challenge. There is a challenge where we have 2.5 FTE that is to be approved here, and I'm asking that we move that to 3.0 because I'm the 0.5 that disappears. So I'd like to ask that first you guys approve for a 3.0 or change it to a 3.0. That way I can still teach here at the school. If it's okay with you, I'd like to share something. Is that okay? Today I asked my students to kind of share why me, why should I stay here or not? And this is what they had to say. Every one of them is kind of random, some English, some Spanish, but everything says the same thing. I'm super fun. They love me. They trust me. I'm a confidant of theirs. They really respect what I have because I respect who they are. I have brought a ton of things to to STEAM, the STEAM program so far in my 7 months here. I brought Space Academy, which Peter Gill has did a great little blurb in the December newsletter about what I've done. It was proposed by Gabrielle Devlin that I work to incorporate more math into what I'm doing, and I've done that incredibly. Some of the cards that are supposed to explain how much the kids really appreciate what I've done in terms of bringing them math in an interesting, real way that's kind of real life applicable, and they've enjoyed it. They enjoyed the patience I've brought with them and encourage them to kind of reach out to do new things. Another example would be when I collaborated with David Greenwood over at the high school to bring in materials to the 8th graders for the body systems so they could start dissecting. This has opened up a world of interest to the life sciences as well as medical sciences that the kids never really even thought or considered that they could do. So I think that's really awesome. In addition, I've worked with David Zarimba to incorporate more shop-like classes and skills into the STEAM classes where the kids are making Rube Goldberg projects. They're using band saws with my observations, saws, drills, CNC routers. Like, we're working on getting them involved and hands-on in a way that they absolutely love. You know, the kids love being there. They love being present. They come in during their lunches. They come in after school. Like, they love being in my classroom. So one of the things that the other thing actually I should mention is I also brought in addition to being the Lego robotics coach, I've also created the chess club, which didn't exist for years. We do a lunch chess tournament. Got over 50 kids who are participating in that tournament. Plus the chess club is bigger now than it ever was in years in the past. So the kids are really interested and motivated. The kids who didn't want to come to school, last year, even still after COVID, they came back today or this year, and they really appreciate coming to my class. Something you could see in the note cards, like they love me. And quite honestly, I love them. So I'd like to really encourage you to reconsider changing the 2.5 to a 3.0. This way I could stay and continue to be a part of District 75 at Carl Sanford. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Miro Rodriguez.
What was the name?
Jimena.
So I've never really met any other teacher like Mr. Katz. He's like, he's an amazing teacher. Like basically what he just said was to sum up everything that I wanted to say. Because last year, like I really didn't like going to school like any other kid, right? And then like his classes are just so like fun. They're so easy to be in, enjoyable. And honestly, I couldn't see him like not teaching there. I can't imagine him without. Yeah. That's it.
Thank you. Any others?
Anyone else?
There's nobody else would like to talk right now.
All right. So there are no further comments?
No.
So we will close that portion of the meeting. Next then is the Board of Education comments. Any board members?
I'm going to read our next code of conduct. We are on code number 9. Code number 9 states, I will respectfully listen to those who communicate with the board, seeking to understand their views while recognizing my responsibility to represent the interest of the entire community. The author goes on to say, this is one of the most important items on the list. It means listen, redirect as appropriate, and don't forget that you are not the board, but a part of it. Respect board action and don't use your position to become an inappropriate sounding board. The chain of command exists for a very viable and important reason, so you must know it and use it. That's all I got. Pretty quick.
Anybody else? I think it's important to acknowledge that our cohort L is back.
Titanium now.
Yeah. Welcome back. We're glad you're back. We're glad you're doing good. And we gotta keep plugging at that physical therapy.
Yeah.
It's important.
Definitely.
All right, then next is District 75 reports, business office.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me an opportunity tonight to discuss our FY24 budget. Anna, if we go to the next page, Our budget process is a long process. It begins, actually, tonight you are approving the treasurer for next year. And will be approving the budget officer for next year as well, the budget developer, and that's when the process really begins. So the process for FY 25 is going to begin now. FY 24, we're now at stage 4 in the process, which is presenting the plan. And so if we go to the next slide, as part of the plan, this has already gone in front of the finance committee. The finance committee received the document that is actually in your board packet, which is a little bit more detailed than we normally provide to the board. But what they did in addition to that was took an entire finance committee meeting to dive deep into the projections, to go beyond the document that you see, to go into each of the projections, to go through and discuss the assumptions behind that. And that provided us the opportunity to discuss and go through many of the things that the board or that the board representatives wanted to understand about the budget. But when we get to this part in the process, we're really looking at that 30,000 foot view. So what we have here is a summary, a 30,000 foot summary of what our FY 24 draft budget is going to look like. If we take a look at the graphs, we see salaries and benefits as being yet again our normal largest expenditure, as well as our levy being our largest revenue source. And they generally fall in line with each other in terms of amounts. In addition to that, we're looking at capital improvements as being the second largest for the coming year expenditure, as well as our food, custodial, and transportation agreements being our third largest expenditure. When we're looking at those capital improvements, that 6.5, that is really and truly our fine arts edition over at Carl Sandburg. We budgeted for the entire amount in this fiscal year, knowing full well we won't finish it in 1 year, but the timing of the project really determines how much we end up using of the budget. And we generally over budget because if we under budget, we may have to actually file an amended budget. So that is being done, knowing full well we probably will not go through the full 6.5 million, but at least giving us the opportunity. If we're looking at our revenue, our 3 major sources of revenue, again this year, levy, evidence-based funding, and our MCATs. MCATs are our mandated state categorical payments, and that is reimbursement for transportation of regular education students, special education students, as well as a reimbursement for those students that we send out for tuition. If we go to the next slide, when we're looking at our revenue projection expenditures, the major increases happened again in our operating levy. We saw a $1.1 million increase for our operating levy. Our evidence-based funding increase is estimated to be $775,000, and our state categoricals are estimated to be $300,000 increase. When we were diving deep into that, we discussed, for example, the state categorical payments. Why did they increase so much this year? Well, one of the main reasons is because we are reimbursed for a prior year's expenditures for our transportation. And last year's expenditures were reimbursed on the COVID year when we didn't transport students. So obviously our reimbursement went down from the state, but with us resuming classes, our reimbursement for the coming year has increased. So that's just an example of some of the items that we went through. If we go to our expenditures, which is the next slide, I wanted to make sure that we identified a few of the things that we've incorporated into the expenditure budget. Number one, we have incorporated the staffing recommendations that will be brought to the board tonight. We've also incorporated current contract provisions. So that means if I have someone who's making BA step 1 this year, we anticipate them to be BA step 2 next year. That's an example of the contract provisions being implemented. Additionally, we've included short and long range programming goals. In terms of our benefits, we've increased our pension based on historical data. We've increased our insurance based on historical data, but we've also utilized current projections from our insurance plan. Those will be finalized before the end of this or before this budget is adopted. But right now we have incorporated those percent increases that have been given to us. Additionally, we've incorporated purchase services. What we generally do is those purchase services are oftentimes increased or decreased based on enrollment and then have an increase of CPI. That is also done for the majority of our supplies. Our capital improvements outside of those $6.5 million are estimated to be about $425,000. That's not just for capital, that's like the maintenance of our buildings, not necessarily a large building project. And finally, we've incorporated broad strategic plan provisions based on conversations that I've had with budget officers who are working with our strategic plan committee and our superintendent to develop those goals that we have over the coming years. If we go to the next slide, does anyone have any questions at this point? I do want to let you know that next or in April, we will be having another finance committee meeting where we will go through some additional changes to the budget because this is a living, breathing document from now until it's adopted. And we will also be going through those large projects, those visible projects that you might see. For example, I think one year we had some chairs that were replaced that were out being disposed of. Those types of things will be discussed at our April Finance Committee, and I'm sure that a summary will be given to the board just for your information so that when you're out in public and people are asking you questions, you know what to respond to for water cooler talk. With that being said, again, there is a timeline in your board packet that explains how this budget will come to the board in the coming months. But our estimated adoption is before June 30th so that we can begin the year with a full plan in place, ready to go. Does anyone have any questions at this point?
I have. I have a question based on what you had said about the capital improvements for the building. The addition being put all in this year. We're breaking ground on that though, this next school year during that, right? So if we don't anticipate it's going to be done in the next school year for this budget, does that mean that it's already paid for because we've included it in the budget, or does that roll over to the next year? Because I
roll
didn't
to the
realize
next
that till
year.
you said that.
So if we only spend $1 million this year, then I roll the budget to next year and we end up budgeting the remaining next year. And if we only use another million, then we roll the budget and we budget for it in the following year. What we're really doing is giving ourselves the opportunity to plan and actually pay for the projects. If we exceed 10% of a budget in any given fund, we're required to file an amendment. And one year we did have that happen where we did exceed that. So we generally try to over plan, realizing it's a budget. We're not paying for anything until it's actually expensed.
But that's not gonna mean that we have a surplus then if we have unspent money in the budget, because it's still allocated for that project.
Correct. And that's why when we discuss surpluses, we discuss it operating versus capital.
Okay.
Because our capital budget, if you're looking at our overall budget, it looks like we have a deficit of, I think, 1.4 million, but that's because we have capital projects in there. If we're looking at our operating surplus, we have yet another balanced budget for the coming year to the tune of about $12,000 at this point.
That just helps explain, so it's not as though, based on how you just explained it, that we're allocating 6.5 and therefore we can just, if we don't quite spend that next year, it's not like we can turn around and.
Spend it on
for
something else. Correct.
Okay.
It has it, and we have actually the money for the Carl Sandburg project is going to be earmarked and in a separate bank account so that we can track that as well.
Those funds become encumbered and they would show there, so you can't use them.
And I'm just making sure
Yeah.
that that's clear, because
No, that's one of the things that we have to continue doing, having these dialogue so that we all understand and get on the same page.
And you answered my question in your last couple of statements because of that gap that I saw there.
Yes.
I just want to make a comment, at the finance committee meeting, we spent about 2 hours going through the revenue or expenditures line by line. And, I gotta tell you again, T, you did a fantastic job. You made it very clear about what's coming in and what's going out and what's going out, where it's going out to. And that's why last month I mentioned that the budget documents that were here, I hope everybody gets a chance, as Steve said, to kind of go through that and then really give you a very good picture of where we're at, where we're going, and how we're gonna get there. So, very good, Jake.
We have shared expenses with the high school.
Correct.
A lot of it in supplies and stuff. Do we foresee there being a reduction in the cost as things get back to normal a little more? Supply chain issues go away?
Right now, we're actually still anticipating increases in supply chain only because of inflation. And even though things are getting back to normal, our costs have significantly increased and continue to increase. So at this point, we are incorporating about a 5% increase for a lot of the things in the budget where we don't have actuals. If we have actuals, for example, our transportation contract, we know that that's going to be X%. If we know it, it's incorporated as it's known. If we don't, that's when we use those estimations.
I think so everybody's clear also on the transportation. We have a contract. If fuel costs go up more than what's in that contract, it's the bus company that has to take that, correct?
No.
We,
Actually, our fuel is incorporated not in the transportation, but in utilities. It's just the way that we are required to account for it. So this year, we actually had increased our fuel quite a bit more than what we ended up having because we saw that large increase in gas prices and then they came back down. But if the gas prices increase, we still are required to pay for the gas that we use.
Yeah, I know we've been looking at some of the legislation, that's budget related. So can you maybe share, what is it, Senate Bill 1994?
1994. So Senate Bill 1994 was recently, like some information was recently released saying that if any district has over 250 days cash on hand, that they will be required to spend it. Number one, the way that the legislation is written, which I went through and read it today, they have not defined cash on hand. So right now, our cash on hand is very different if you're looking at operating funds versus capital funds. They haven't defined it. So in essence, if they say it's all funds, they could then be requiring bond money that you have for a construction project in that calculation. So that needs to be defined at the state level before this is finalized. So absent that information, what I'm doing is using the current state identified cash on hand, which is part of something called our financial profile score. That is done every year when we have our audit finalized. So I went back the last couple of years to look at where's our days cash on hand. And we fall between 250 and about 260 days cash on hand. So we're right within the lines. 1 day's cash on hand is about $66,000. But we also have to keep in mind that while this FY22, we were at 251. We also for FY23 and 24 have anticipated that we're going to put fund balance towards the Carl Sandburg project, which will use a significant portion of that cash on hand. So we are going to see that go down. But again, we're going to have to wait for the state to release a little bit more information, but I want to let the board know that we should not have, assuming they keep things the same and they define it this way, we should not have any impact on D75. Provided that we continue the path that we have shared with the community in terms of providing fund balance for the project.
And I didn't know if anyone else had read into that very deeply, so I asked that question because IASB was basically asking all of us to reach out to our legislators, but I wanted to understand what the impact was and what that looked like, because I have no idea how many days cash on hand, how does that define? Because it's saying the stat, if the law goes through, that any district that has more than 250, and I'm glad to know that we're right around there. If any district has more than 250 days of cash on hand, you're required to spend anything over and above that on student services and things. I don't have a problem with spending money on student services, but knowing that we have a 5-year plan and we have earmarked certain things, I would hate to have us be obligated to suddenly pay all of that down such that then another year we're at a deficit and don't have money to pay our bills, so that was just a question to know how far. So it sounds like we would be on the cusp, but then once we do the project, it would probably.
Well, and also if we can fight this legislation, we should, because how is any district going to be allowed to save for a roof, for example? Roofs are multi-million-dollar projects. So they're in essence saying you can't save that money, which will put you in a situation where you then have to put the burden on the taxpayers or don't fix your roof. So there's a lot of flaws, in my opinion, in what I have seen in this document, plus a lot of ambiguity that needs to be clarified.
And to refresh, not everyone may have, I don't remember who was on the board when, not everybody may have been aware of the fact that in the last couple of years, we did replace a couple of roofs and it was not done with needing a referendum or needing to go because we had saved in advance in order to pay for a lot of that. So that's an example of we didn't have to go to our taxpayers and ask them to suddenly pay for more because we had saved for the rainy days, so that we didn't have a rain in our classrooms, but.
And
so
that was done with intention.
Yeah.
So we use our interest income and we're saving that revenue source for these types of things. Which is a great practice. So I hope people don't get penalized for that.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, T. Okay. Human resources.
Good evening. I am here to share with you the fiscal year 2024 staffing proposal. Next slide on it. So several criteria impact how a staffing plan is put together. That can include everything from projected student enrollment, current staff headcount, to the licensure or endorsements that those staff hold, any unfilled vacancies, anticipated vacancies, and then the different funding sources. Building and district leadership are the ones that put the staffing plan together. Initial assessments begin in November. That's reevaluated in January and then finalized in late February to early March on a next slide. So what you see here is the FTE allotment per building, along with anticipated enrollment. Lincoln, we are not anticipating any change in enrollment, so therefore we're not anticipating any need to change the FTE. At Washington, we're anticipating an increase of 24 students. To accommodate that, we are moving a previously budgeted 1.0 FTE dual language teacher. That role is currently unfilled over to Washington. Mechanics Grove, then we're anticipating a 27 student drop in enrollment. But based upon the needs of those students, we are wanting to make no change in FTE by adding a 0.5 FTE is for a math intervention support and 0.5 FTE library resource support. And then at Carl Sandburg, we're anticipating a decrease in enrollment of 24 students, but requesting an increase of 1.5 FTE. Due to the needs of the students at Carl Sandburg, we're asking that 2.0 FTE be added in special education, then a decrease in 0.5 FTE in general education. Next slide on it. When everything shakes out, it'd be a total increase of new FTE of 2.5 for the district. Again, to recap, that would be 0.5 FTE math intervention support, increase at Mechanics Grove, a 0.5 FTE library resource support at Mechanics Grove, an addition of 2.0 FTE special education at Carl Sandburg, and a reduction in force of 0.5 FTE general education at Carl Sandburg. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
What is the cost equivalency of losing the 0.5 FTE at Carl Sandburg?
Do you happen, I mean, that's going to be a number we're going to have to,
We have to find out.
yeah, provide you.
How does the 0.5 in general education at Carl Sandburg, how does that get distributed? Is that taken out of an elective? Is that taken out of
It would be-
ELA? Does that just mean the classes get bigger? How does that work?
Okay, so it'd be taken out of my understanding, and Sarah, if you want to come up and support me on this one. I believe it's a study skills position that was that we're reducing the general education. Is that correct or incorrect?
Correct. Does that mean they're not having the study skills class?
We are looking to support the students with their study skill needs in their core programming. So as they're working through their content, we would be supporting them that way. But the related arts rotation classes are within what our normal class sizes will be. So 26 average for the 6-week rotation, 29 for the 9-week, and the 12-week rotation, which is comparable to what we've been. So it will not impact the class sizes of our related arts and does not impact our core programming class sizes.
My question then is if the core classes aren't being impacted or decreased, then what's the thought process of pulling a science teacher?
We're not pulling the STEM classes, so those would stay intact.
Can you help us understand? I guess I'm confused because if, I understand what you're saying, that because the study skills class had been one of the related arts rotations, right? And then, so now you're taking that out of the related arts so that there are fewer related arts and putting that into asking the ELA and social studies teachers essentially to incorporate that as part of their lessons in the core classes?
And within the related arts classes that they're still having. So
Sure,
it'll still be embedded into their day.
Okay. So how? I'm just trying to understand how then that translates to the teacher who spoke to us, how that position. Just trying to understand.
So part of it's the SOD dismissal order list. So when we had to look at that SOD disorder list, what is the certification that we needed to see if there was place for it? Was it in the specials classes or was it social studies?
When we were looking at our needs in terms of the staffing, we knew we were needing more. Because the enrollment is going down at the middle school, in order to maintain our class sizes, there was not a need for those 3 additional sections of study skills in order to maintain the general classes. We know that the autism program is coming up and Jamie can speak to this from when it started in
This will be going on the
6th year. And so that particular program does require additional staffing. So those teachers will be entering Carl Sandburg Middle School, which explains the 2.0 increase in special education FTE, which is a separate group of students who have their adaptive related arts program. Jamie, you can speak to this much better than I can.
Yeah, so for the special education program, it'll be, we have our, one of our programs, self-contained programs is already existing. The other self-contained program is the Excels program, which services students with different needs, needing a lot of structure. And so that's the program that's rolling up to 6th grade next year. So that accounts for one of the FTE, and then the other special education FTE, we experienced a plethora of move-ins last summer. Many of the move-ins with the more complex individualized education plans were 5th and 6th graders. I'm sorry, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. And so with those students moving up, just based on staffing the different sections, we needed to have that second special education teacher. So those are the 2, that accounts for the 2.0 special education FTE at Carl Sandburg. So those are specifically based on student need, but then separate from many of the general education components.
And then study skills is happening in the social studies class.
It is.
Was the study skills class a class that students opted to take or one that they were encouraged to take based on of teacher observations or performance in class?
That I will have to get back to you on. I'm not exactly sure how students would take into that class.
Okay, I can tell you from my experience with middle schoolers, at least 2 years ago, when I think they started it, because my older middle schooler did not have it the previous year. So it became one of the rotations of it. They were doing it as part of related arts. It became one of the, they had only at that point 3 related arts. Now there's many more and it's changed and it's enhanced. But at the time it was one of their trimesters. They had one for part of one of the trimesters, they were required to do it. And it basically told them like how to use their planner and how to keep track of things. And for the incoming sixth graders anyway. That's at least where it started. Whether they were incorporating that in other areas, I don't know, but that's what I can speak to. It was something everybody did. And I think it was helpful, but I don't hear that we're eliminating it. It's just being done as part of the social studies. And it's a chart you said, I mean, there is a protocol and a policy with when an FTE or 0.5 of an FTE needs to be addressed, then you approach that chart so that it's not an arbitrary
Right.
decision.
So it has to go off of seniority. In this case, we're asking to reduce by a half, so there's still a half that's needed. That's what we're coming to the board with is the recommendation. That's the next one, yes. And it's a standard process that we typically try to stay away from. It's a process that all schools, public schools would have to follow if they're doing a reduction. And we can get through that more in the reduction force process. It's an honorable discharge. So it's not saying it's anything related to the individual's performance.
Guys, I'm sorry, is there, I know that you have listed several factors that go into this decision, but was there any one factor that was like the major determining factor in this? And I know that student enrollment is one of them, but when I think about 24 students across the entire building, that's really not that big of a decrease. Across the middle school. Is this mainly a funding decision or is this more based on enrollment? And I know it's all those factors, but is there like a major one that stood out?
Every year when we start staffing, we have formulas that we use that determine. So based on X number of students, we have this number of FTE to work with. For Sandburg, it's a little bit different than the elementary school because it's very easy to say you have 53 first graders, so you need X sections. But for for Sandburg, we use just the number of students and the divisor, which is about 26. And that tells Mr. Pilot how many general ed FTE he has to work with to build his schedule. And that's how he builds it. So it's not a funding. It is not anything other than this is the standard that we follow every year for determining the number of FTE. So there was no outside of our normal process in deciding this 0.5. It is the way it works in terms of our formula.
Thank you.
Additional questions?
Anyone have anything else?
Okay. You can close it. So the next part is the recommended board action to approve a reduction in force. So a reduction in force is what Kevin said. It's never the desired outcome of the staffing plan. And it's something that we try to avoid when possible. The board resolution to approve an honorary dismissal is the procedural formality necessitated by the Illinois School Code to reduce 0.5 FTE in general education across Sandburg Middle School. In the original plan for the 2022-2023 school year, 0.6 FTE was needed at Carl Sandburg. However, the district was unsuccessful in filling this part-time role. This position was later increased to a 1.0 FTE by adding 0.4 FTE in the general education area, which resulted in successfully filling the position. The projected decrease in enrollment by 24, along with what T just spoke to about the formula that we use to make these calculations, necessitates the district eliminate 0.5 FTE in general education. The individual impacted by this would have recall rights if we find a need and need to reevaluate the plan.
Based on what you just said, so we had a 0.6 that we couldn't fill, so we increased it. Now you're asking us to bring it back down to 0.5 and hope we fill it at 0.5?
No, we're not filling the position. For Katz is in the role of 0.5.
Okay. he's in the role of 0.5 now, or? under the
Will be
proposal?
under the proposal.
But if, for example, he decided he didn't want to stay at 0.5, then we'd be in the same position we were last year trying to fill 0.5, we're last year at 0.6.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, next is superintendent's report.
The one item in my area is for the board's consideration and to approve a special board meeting date for May 11th at 5 o'clock. The purpose of this meeting would be to reseat the board. That would be after the election. At that time, we would have the board identify president, vice president, and secretary again, along with bringing on the new board member. And then in addition to that, you go through your committee process with at least explaining what the committees were and some of the work that's in each of those. So that when we came back for the next meeting, everybody would have the opportunity to be able to decide what they would like to do again. So in order for us to meet the time limit from the time the election has been completed, we would need to have a special meeting because our current board meeting date is just outside that parameter. So that's why we're requesting for May 11th at 5 o'clock.
That's a Thursday for everybody, since we're not used to doing that.
Yeah.
It's fine, I just,
Oh, good point out.
and I think that's to accommodate our leaving board member who couldn't otherwise make this day, which makes sense, we want to think.
We will have a celebration. Yeah. Well, I got.
Okay. All right. Committee updates. Board policy.
I was supposed to get back to everybody and look at the remaining 4 sections and assign sections so that over the next 2 meetings, one of them being today, we could do a whole lot of policy work to get us ready for this, the end of the year. I haven't had time to, so I didn't do that. Also thinking, since we have 2 more, or since we have two meetings, including tonight, I'm happy to go through one of the sections, and that would leave a really big chunk of section for the next meeting. Or we can start fresh and redo it for the incoming, so that the new board member gets the best work at it. And not worry about rushing between now and then. And when we're seating the board policy committee, perhaps we should add more than just me to it, so that we can share the wealth a little, because work is getting a little busy.
Well, no, that's a very good point. I think it's time that we look at the whole board committee structure and kind of take another look at it.
Part of that next,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
That next thing anyway.
Yeah.
I don't mind doing the policy, it's just, I think it was a good idea for us to divide it up into 12 sections and do it over the course of the year, and we kind of started doing that last March with the idea that we would end it in February. But since that was the first time we were doing that, we did get off track a little because of some of the bigger, we didn't account for the fact that pest policy stuff was going to take a lot of time to talk about, and
Yeah.
we all don't want to be here till midnight every single evening, I get that too. So maybe we need to tweak it a little further. One thought that I had that I'm open to suggestions on would be maybe we divide this over the course of 2 years rather than 1. So that they're a little bit smaller chunks. And since theoretically, we have an election every other year, the board should be in place for 2 years. So that would mean over the course of the 2-year time frame, we get through it all while so that we're still renewing it on a regular basis, taking a look at it, getting to know it, but maybe not trying to cram it all in.
I think that makes sense.
Well, it's important because it follows as well with what we've been talking about with, the review and updating and making sure that everything is what it's supposed to be. So that's a good point, Bill.
So I think maybe it's time to tweak it a little rather than throwing it all in because, and once again, we didn't, because I
Right.
didn't get the list out. I'm sure all of you, in your spare time, sat around reading the board policies for fun. But I didn't, so.
Yeah.
So I think that I am happy to take a look at the section that the press policy review section we had done before. And maybe dividing it into a 2-year, so maybe 24 sections instead of 12, and with the idea of perhaps starting that at our, not the May 11th, but the regular board meeting.
Well, and again, I would suggest that not only do we look at that, this, the whole committee thing, and make sure we get committees in place that are, functional and where we should be with things. But certainly that is a good suggestion. Because we don't want to have it so it's becoming a burden to everybody, but it's rolling, and it does the opportunity to make sure we're looking at policies and making sure that we're adhering to them. So. Look forward to hearing from you.
Okay.
Okay, Finance Advisory Committee. We met last month, and as I spoke earlier, we went through the budget. The draft budget line by line, and that was what some of the presentation tonight was. And there'll be more to come, and I think. Was it April 10th? April 10th is the next Finance Advisory meeting. So, shared services. I don't think there's any report.
No, we do have another shared service meeting coming up. I don't know the date off the top of my head, but I think it's happening before our next meeting. I'm sorry, I don't have the date off the top of my head, but
All right.
we do have another scheduled meeting for shared services to get that together.
And that would be another committee that we want to talk about. Because we want to keep that alive and keep looking at what we can do with shared services. Strategic planning. We did the mission, the value, and the goals, and then the action plan is in the hands of the administration right now. And Sarah and Jamie are working diligently on tweaking that action plan and getting input from other administrative folks. And April 3rd, or no, it's the next board meeting. We will talk about, we're gonna meet, I think, on April 3rd. Where we hope to have the final action plan, and then have a discussion with the board, and then the administration can implement their action plan and start moving forward with the goals. And we'll be on track for that. Okay,
That shared service meeting is next Tuesday, just FYI.
and then representative updates. Steam Foundation.
We are in full swing planning for the pizza throwdown that's finally going to happen after a few years hiatus. That is going to be on April 20th at Sandburg. We are in the process of securing as many pizza participants as possible. If any of you have never been, it's a fun night. You can buy tickets, you buy tickets in advance, you can also buy tickets there, but it helps for planning and it's a little cheaper if you buy them in advance. And there is a family discount for 4-pack. And then you get a wristband and you get a ballot and you get to, we're aiming for 8 pizza places, but we'll see what we can acquire. And then you can go around and try the different ones. And there's 5 different categories that everybody gets to vote on: best sauce, but best specialty. I can't remember all of them, but there's 5 categories, best overall. And we try to get local places who are around here and have them all try it out. It's a fun night. They also sell like sodas, water, and I think Tony Canones is supposed to be there to sell some, so it's a fun night, it's just nice to get out and do that, and it's a big fundraiser, which we use then to fund scholarships for STEAM camps and like the Saturday steamers and the STEAM camp over the summer and the Saturday, the STEAM scholars that they're trying to put together to do that, like last year with a presentation at the board meeting in May. So it's a fun night, so I encourage everyone to attend. We'll be looking for volunteers when we get a little bit closer to it, so I may send out an email to everybody, finding out if anybody wants to sell, even just work the cashiers and things like that. So I'll find out what their needs are at our next meeting and get that out to everybody.
CEDAW.
At our last governing board meeting, the purchase of Fairhaven was finally fully approved, so CEDAW will be moving forward with that. Their expected closing date is July 1st. At the same time, their enrollment update was reported, and there are currently 12 unfilled vacancies at Fairhaven School, and caps on their enrollment and their programming at that school. So they're also in the middle of negotiations with their support staff, which, as I just mentioned, is one of their biggest areas of need. So I think it'll be interesting to see the outcome of that negotiation process. I did receive an appraisal for a property, and the next governing board meeting is June 7th.
Community outreach, no report. So, next is a consent agenda. So anything that anybody wants to pull off? If not, we need one motion on all items listed below. This is the February 21st regular board meeting minutes, approval of personnel report, the bill list, annual renewal list, FOIA requests, and the treasurer's report. No? I'd make that motion. Second. Motion second, all those in favor?
Oh, we have to do a roll call.
Oh, roll call. Sorry.
Rose,
Aye.
no, I know. I was trying to remember exactly what my notation on here needed to be. So, okay, Hiskey.
Aye.
Okay. Gallegos.
Aye.
Fingerhead, aye. Pelletier.
Aye.
Carl
Aye.
and Holly is absent.
Okay. Next is board action items. The first item is the motion. I'd make motion at the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75, accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the staffing proposal for school year 23-24 as presented. Second, Freddie.
Rose.
Aye.
Gallegos.
Aye.
Hiskey.
Aye.
Pelletier.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
I'm gonna vote no.
No, if I messed this up on that. All right, next, then I would make a motion to approve resolution authorizing honorable dismissal and reassignment non-tenured teacher.
So then you go ahead and you read the next part of the recommendation that the Board of Education of Mundelein
Oh, I'm sorry. that the Board of Education, of Wonderland Elementary School, is 75, accepts the superintendent's recommendation to approve the attached resolution for the following certified teaching staff. Administration recommends the Board of Education motion to approve resolution authorizing unlimited dismissal and reassignment with part-time teacher Todd Katz.
0.50.
0.50.
Second.
Motion second.
Rose,
Aye.
Hitzke.
Aye.
Kayugas.
Aye.
Fingerhut, no. Pelletier.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
And make a motion that the Board of Education, of Mundelein Elementary School District 75, accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve a special board meeting on May 11th, 2023.
Second. Rose.
Aye.
Pelletier.
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye. Kayugas.
Aye.
Hitzke.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
And Holly's absent, sorry.
Okay. Then next, we have to go into executive session. So I'd make a motion that we go into executive session to discuss the sale or purchase of securities, investments, or investment contracts. 51 LC 3S 120/2C7. And discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, whether for proposed purpose of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.065 ILC CS 120/2C21.
Second. Rose.
I,
Fingerhut, aye. Pelletier.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
Kayugas.
Aye.
And Hitzke.
Board of Education meeting will now adjourn, and we're going to enter into executive session at.
We gotta wait till everybody gets out.
Oh,
Well, we're ending the first meeting
Oh,
at 7:50.
Got you. I thought going-
Adjourn.
But we're adjourning at 7.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Got it.
Yep, you're right.
And before some of you leave, I just wanted to say thanks for your support from the administration and the board for the past few weeks, especially that first wonderful week I was home. Spent a few extra days in the hospital because of how they dosed me with painkillers. And so it took a little longer, but I appreciate all your help and support.
Calling us back to order at 8:35.
What?
Okay. You asking for roll call?
yes,
Okay. Rose,
here.
okay. Carl,
Here.
Hitzke.
Here.
Kayugas.
Here.
Fingerhut here, Pelletier.
Here.
And Holly is absent. Like a motion? Do you like a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the special board meeting on May 11th, 2000. Wait,
Executive session minutes.
yes, that's not typed on here that way. To approve the executive session minutes from February 21st, 2023.
Second.
Fingerhut, aye. Hitzke.
Aye.
Gallegos.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
And Pelletier.
Aye.
Holly is absent.
That's Department President's prerogative.
Oh, okay. I'm lost and all that. Well, I usually don't. Yeah, then I. Probably to,
Does anybody have anything they would like to propose for a future agenda? That can be passed on to the president.
well, one thing is I don't think it's. I was gonna say with the action plan, but I don't know that that needs any action by us.
Strategic plan part?
Yeah.
Well, aren't you bringing that back to us? then? Yeah, so that will be on the agenda, the
Right.
future agenda.
Yeah,
Just remember the District 2020 referendum is coming up.
yeah. Started seeing a lot of signs. Yeah.
I want to bring something up, just for the good of the group. We talked about the May special board meeting for the reseating. One of the things I wanted to mention, and I had a conversation with Dr. Myers. I have a lot of stuff going on work-wise. I'm fully committed to the board and everything we're doing here. But for my committee spot on the finance committee, as much as it hurts me, because I've been a part of it for almost 3 years now. I would appreciate if somebody could take that spot for me. It's just a lot for me right now. And I think Ray needs, I think obviously there should be 2 board members on there. So it is just a lot for me personally right now to take on, and I think I've missed the last 2, not intentionally, just I want to be there and then something comes up. I am traveling an inordinate amount, more than I had ever planned to. But so somebody, if you guys can kind of think, obviously amongst us, who can take that spot, it would be greatly appreciated. From my perspective.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, but I think, again, that's something that you put in that mix of discussion on the whole committee thing. Because I think we need to have a discussion about the committee structure and what committees. I mean, we need committees that are functioning and that are being productive and not just having committee to say that we got a committee and it's not doing it. So that would certainly be something, that we'll be able to deal with. Yep. Anybody have anything else? All right, so if there's nothing further, then can we get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Motion, second,
I'm hearing, okay, Ray
aye.
Rose, sorry, Hitzke.
Aye.
Gallegos,
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye, Dealature.
Aye.
Carl,
Aye.
and Holly is absent, and the time is 8:39. Sorry.